Okay, I think we're live.
Awesome.
How are you doing, Natasha?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. So let us know in the comments if you can see us. I believe we are live. Hopefully there's some audience out there who's tuned in already. What we'll do is we'll start off with some introductions. I know many of the people who have signed up to watch this already know us, but for those who don't, so my name is Pete Hogg. I am the founder of MQLFlow. We are a marketing consultancy specializing in automation for small businesses. Essentially what we do is help small businesses to build workflows that automate business processes to increase productivity and profitability. So that's my spiel. Over to you, Natasha.
Thank you. I'm Natasha South. I am the founder of Recruitment Consulting. So I do a mixture of fractional COO roles within the recruitment sector, and then also launched Recruitment Ops Mentoring, which is a specialist mentoring and development program specifically for the people sort of within the operations function for recruitment businesses. So really helping them to solve the problem that I like to phrase is I don't know what I don't know. So that's the thing that most of us come across, and essentially helping them to work out how to set up their operations in the most effective way to help grow their recruitment businesses. And naturally, tech is a huge part of what usually comes underneath our remit. So it's great to be involved and for us to have a chat about this.
Yeah, I'm excited actually. I know we've briefly run over a few things that we're going to talk about between ourselves, and I know this is a topic that we're both very enthused about. So I'm a little bit concerned about actually running over time.
Yeah,
we'll be cognizant of that, and we may have to swiftly move on if we start to talk too much. So to talk about the session, so obviously we've outlined within the promos that we've done for this so far what we're going to be talking about, but just to give a quick run through of what you can expect on today's session, we're going to be talking about understanding your business relationship with technology. We're going to be talking about how to curate a tech stack that supports growth, how to negotiate and evaluate vendors, potential for technology in the future, and then hopefully we'll have time for some Q&A at the end. So if anybody wants to add comments, if you put comments on this, we will see those and hopefully be able to answer some of those questions at the end for you. So tech stack tune-up, Natasha. So shall we start? We were talking about the evolution of technology and the massive amount of products that are on the market right now. The huge. I've actually got a slide right now, which I'm just gonna share. Now this is an AI and automation market map, as you can see. This isn't specific to recruitment. I would love it if somebody could create something like this for recruitment. So anybody out there who can create something like this, please share it, because I would love to see that. There is a lot of stuff on the market, and I think that's quite confusing for a lot of people. There's finding what are the things that you need within your business. How do you avoid shiny object syndrome? Natasha, maybe you can say a few words about the evolution of technology and what's got us to this point.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one, isn't it? Because I think I do quite a lot of work around, thinking about our business's relationship with technology and kind of how we've got to this point. So if you think about it, the recruitment as we know it has been around for a couple of 100 years, but actually the nature of how it works at the moment, we started off with just needing a telephone and a Rolodeck. We were working from the fact that all you needed to have was, details of people's CVs, a physical database, usually with paper CVs inside. And, during the 80s, when computers became much more commonplace, we started to see implementation of having online, well, not online, but like a computer-based database. We started to have email. We started to have all of these different products. And by the sort of the 90s and the early noughties, we had, you know, some really core elements of the recruitment tech stack, which is essentially your CRM, so how you're actually storing all of your candidates and your clients' data, either with or as part of an ATS, so how we're tracking that system through. We had a website, which is obviously now your shop front, as opposed to having that physical shop that was in the street, as it would have been prior to the sort of 80s and 90s. We have email, which is how the majority of people are communicating about this nowadays. And we started to see the advent of like job boards and like online advertising for roles and stuff like that. And that, you know, that's a pretty easy tech stack to manage. And then when we've sort of started getting into the noughties, into the tens, and sort of where we are now, it has all of a sudden exploded. And I, to be honest, this picture that you've got up is perfect, because I'm like, this is what it feels like. It feels like there are so many different bits of tech that we have managed to slot into every single part of the recruitment process. But for me, I think sometimes tech's being created to fix problems that we don't necessarily have, or it's not a problem within your actual business. And what I see a lot of, particularly, you know, with the consulting side of things that I do, is you go into businesses and they have huge tech stacks of loads of different products that have all been brought on at different times, you know. So even thinking about how, you know, we get that nice slick, you know, the contract alignments and how we're reviewing those processes. And a lot of the time, you know, you get a really good sales pitch. So you think, yeah, cool, that's going to revolutionize how we operate. And there's no engagement. And usually it's because it was not a problem that you had in the first place. So I think this is how we're in this position now. And I got this little stat that we've got on the screen there. I was looking into PitchBook and just how many pieces of technology have been created, and 4,000 rec tech businesses just registered since 2020. So it's easy to see how this is ridiculously overwhelming for people.
Yeah, very true. And you know, I think you're right. Having worked in the SaaS technology sector myself as well, you know, I assessing competitors and you know, trying to solve problems. Tech businesses are trying to solve problems that, you're right, maybe they've never worked in the sector themselves, and you know, also different types of businesses have different types of challenges. I remember, you know, back in, I don't know, maybe it must have been about 10 years ago, when I was first introducing automation into a recruitment business. And, you know, I was saying, oh, you know, we can do this, we can do this automation where if you've got an active candidate on your database, it's going to flag them and you'll be able to see all of the people who are actively looking for work when you do your searching within the CRM. And I had, because we were in the professional recruitment space, you know, it came to my attention that actually, for a lot of roles, it actually doesn't matter whether that person is actively looking for a role. In some cases, many recruiters are actually looking for somebody who's not looking for a role. They're looking for the person, you know, the best person, the best match for that job, regardless of whether they're looking for a job. So flagging that in the system was just not useful to them. And I think that's just an example that illustrates the point of, again, people who are in operations roles and marketing roles within recruitment businesses. I think it's just the same as people within technology businesses themselves. It's just really important to understand how the technology is being used and whether the problem that you're trying to solve is really a problem.
Yeah. And I think, you know, that leads us really nicely onto, I guess, the thing that I look at with businesses is helping them to understand what their relationship is like with technology and actually where tech fits. Because the point is, not every recruitment company has to have the same technology strategy. You know, as we've said, depending on the sector that you work in, the type of recruitment that you do, you don't need to automate absolutely everything. And you don't have to have this super slick, streamlined, completely integrated tech stack if that's not appropriate for your business. And I think the problem is, because people are talking about it so much, they've got FOMO. Like that's literally what it is, because they think, oh God, these businesses are doing this, or they're using this piece of technology. And I think the first thing, when I go into a business is we kind of start to look at the business strategy and what you're trying to achieve and what type of business you are. And two things to think about is, number one, what is your current relationship with technology? And number two, where do you want technology to fit into your business, and kind of seeing if there's a disconnect there. Because when we think about your current relationship with technology, as an ops person, and every single ops person out there, I'm always banging on about a CRM first strategy, right? For me, everything about your tech stack needs to hang off your CRM. And if you are kind of in a position where you don't have particularly tech-enabled employees within your business, if you're struggling to get them to interact with the CRM and just do things in a tech-enabled way, you kind of going down a process of being like, right, we want to automate absolutely everything. You don't have the foundation there to be able to do that. And I also think looking at, certain types of recruitment, like search businesses, there will be technology that can support them. But actually part of the allure and the quality of work that they do is about the fact that it is to do with the network, and it is about looking at what your relationship is like with technology in the first place. Do you successfully manage to integrate new products? Because if you're in a position where you bring on a new tool and a couple of months later, no one's using it, we actually need to take it a step back, and we need to look at your people processes and how do we communicate change within the business. So if you want to implement something new, what process do we go through to actually implement that? What are your training processes to get people to adopt the new technology that you're bringing into the business? Because if you don't have that right, very little tech that you bring in is going to actually work and be successful. And your opinion and your feeling about tech is going to be negative, because you're going to think I'm wasting money. But actually, we need to take a step back and start with that people element first, and then we build out the tech stack from there.
Yeah, so not just technology for technology's sake, getting excited about something that feels exciting, or as you say, quite often you get sold to, and you end up buying this piece of technology, and then it sits there and people don't use it. And we'll talk a little bit more about the kinds of things that you need to assess when you're looking at a piece of technology in a little while. So yeah, we talked about the types of businesses that that they are. Maybe you can kind of go through like what are some of the types of businesses that people need to be self-aware to identify who what type of business they are and how they should be approaching technology.
Yeah, so I talk about a few things around this, and I think it's really understanding sometimes your sector affects it. So one thing I like to ask my clients is, what do your clients, what's their relationship with technology? If you work in a super tech-enabled sector, then actually it's almost a selling point for you as a business to be super tech-enabled, right? It's actually something that clients looking at you are going to go, yeah, okay, cool. These are super forward-thinking. They're going to be able to match the level that we're at. They understand what we're trying to achieve, and also thinking about how they might want you to integrate with systems that they've got. Right. So thinking about, do you work in a sector that is particularly tech enabled itself? Right. It's a great selling point for you to think about. And what are you trying to get tech to do? Right. So do you want to be in a position where you have automated everything, and all your consultants are doing is getting on the phones, right? That to me is that kind of top tier level of tech enabled business where you are just focusing on that relationship piece with your consultants, and you are going to have the most beautiful, fully integrated, streamlined tech stack that no one has to touch in an ideal world. It's just all built and all working by itself. And that's kind of what a lot of people are looking to move towards, right? And that is amazing. But some businesses might go, actually, do you know what? We don't need to automate every tiny process. These are not necessarily problems for us. What we want to do is actually just streamline what we've got in place and optimize the usage of the products that we want. right?
Yeah.
We want to make sure that if we're investing in something, we know how to measure ROI on it, we know how to train for maximum adoption, and that we can actually see that it's making an impact on what we do.
Yeah.
And then there's kind of what, the barest relationship with technology might just be, we have a specific problem, we want to fix it, and we think that tech can fix it, and you get a singular product that is going to come, slot in, and fix that problem for you. We don't need to think about it as an entire ecosystem.
Yeah.
So kind of understanding, based on what your future objectives are as a business and where you see that relationship going, you can then work out how do we curate that tech stack based on what type of business we are.
Yeah, and auditing tech stack. Obviously, we actually have a slide just on a process. This is your process, isn't it, of how you go about recommending people approach auditing their existing technologies. So I think this is just a really useful process to run through when you're looking at what technology you already have within your business.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, again, because I come at this from, this is kind of where I think me and you have got this really nice dynamic, because you're coming at this from a technical side. I'm coming at it more from like that people and that like strategic element of how we're getting that engagement. So I talk a lot in here about how we're speaking to the business, right? So the tech survey is really understanding the people within your business. What are they having issues with? Is there anything that they know they're not using well enough and they want more training on? Is there particular problems that they do want solving? I had a great example. I run a tech stack optimization workshop, and one of my attendees was sort of talking about the fact they went through this whole process of implementing a new product and it just wasn't being used. And then it was only after they had kind of had it for 6 months and everyone was like, okay, this isn't being used, that they actually asked the business, and they were like, well, this wasn't really an issue for us in the first place. It takes us 2 seconds to do. Like, it's not something, I don't see why I need to log into a different screen to do this, because actually this was never a problem in the first place. So I think also really getting that feedback internally to understand what is going to fix problems for people. And then looking at like making sure you understand or have a benchmark of what good usage looks like, right? So thinking about what are the minimum expectations for how you want your consultants to be using this product, and kind of, what are the consequences if they're not? But what does that kind of really engaged usage look like for you guys? And then assessing people on it, because for me, that helps you to understand, is the problem over user adoption, right? And then we're thinking about those training processes. So we're thinking about how we're embedding the products into the business. How do we introduce them? Are we continuously training and doing updates on training for how we do this? Or is it the product itself, right? Because if everyone in your business is just not using that product, it's probably just not fit for purpose. And this helps you to define which direction your sort of optimization process might go in. And then I think we talked about this as well around the product reviews, and kind of actually looking at, is it serving its purpose? Is it doing what it's supposed to do? Is it the best product for you? And actually, could there be something better on the market? And better could be, depending on, again, what situation your business is in, could be cheaper because that budget might be an issue for you at the moment. Or it could be, do we want it to integrate with what the future is? Do we want it to be the top of the most forward-thinking product that we can get? And then really categorizing and streamlining that. So we've put there around, like, could you not live without it? Does it do the job? But actually, there may be better things out there. Do we want to replace it or consolidate it? So does one of your existing products actually now deliver that? Or do we actually just want to get rid of it?
Yeah, and actually we've got a section coming up where we're going to be talking about how we actually go about finding, comparing vendors as well. So discovering those new technologies and being aware of what's in the market is obviously a very important part of that as well. Cool. So we've actually got like a couple more slides. I just wanted to So you mentioned earlier, so this looks a little bit scary to some, but you mentioned earlier about having this sort of a very enabled business that's, you know, a complete automated process where, like you say, a recruitment consultant, their only task may be to just build those relationships with their clients and or their candidates. And actually, you know, the function, I think, of a lot of technology, particularly when it comes to automation, which is my area of expertise, is particularly in the recruitment sector, to enable those human connections by removing the recruitment consultant from you know, the having their head buried in the CRM, having their head buried into their laptops. So what you're seeing right here is actually so this is this is a market map. Sorry, this is a map of processes, and each of the different sectors here. So this is very focused on marketing, and you have your different sort of places. So your website, your Google business profile, your LinkedIn. You could probably add job boards to this, and those are the blue boxes. And then you have how the data flows between, and then you have your channels, which are in those diamond shapes as well. So how do each of these things link to and build upon each other? So, for example, there's some automation flows here for when the CRM, when a placement is made and marked as such in the CRM, an email might go out to your client and or candidate to ask them for a review. Now, that's a pretty standard automation. But actually, you can build upon that and say, well, okay, what would be the next steps that somebody might take once that Google review has been requested and or received? So it might be that you have somebody in marketing who will look at that review and say, you know, take a quote from it and create a social media post that says, well, you know, we've had all of this, all of these great reviews. Here's an example. And you know, and a beautiful quote with a nice piece of artwork with some stars on it. That's you know. These are the processes now, with the introduction of generative AI into the ecosystem, that we can actually even automate as well. Because if you think about the human process that's involved there, particularly on a you know, from a design perspective, if you're putting something up on you know, a templated piece of artwork, if you're creating a social post which has a very sort of formulaic type of structure to it, you know, these are the types of things that you can say, well, actually, is that the person that we have doing this, can we actually have them doing something that isn't just kind of a very formulaic process, and actually just use generative AI. So some of the automations that I've built recently for recruitment clients have been exactly that. So you're completely removing the human from the process there, and say, okay, you don't need to be putting text into a template and then posting that onto LinkedIn. That's actually something that's, you know, once you've set up those templates, you can just move away from that and then focus on the next thing. So and then again, you know, maybe you have Google News alerts which keep you informed about what's happening in the market. Or, you know, can you repurpose those and create, use an AI to create a social post around those, or create a blog around those? And even whether you're doing that automatically, whether you trust AI to do that automatically for you, or you have those human intervention steps in between. So maybe you're using Trello or Asana, and it's putting that information into there for you to sign off and then publish. Like, you know, when you start to think about what's possible now with generative AI, those cognitive tasks, those creative tasks, they don't necessarily all have to come from a person. And again, it's just removing that person from having their head buried in a laptop doing something, when they can be focused on other tasks like building those relationships. And so I think just wanted to point out a few of those things which are away from the CRM integration, which is typically, you know, updating data, taking you know, updating dates, and it's very kind of rule based, very structured, and you're taking processes which are very what should we say? I'm trying to think of the word, but basically like rules based processes. If this, then that. Like, that's, you can do a lot more than that these days.
And I was going to say, Pete, actually, like, so when you work with clients and stuff like that, and we look at, because the thing is, at the moment, it feels like the possibilities of automation are absolutely endless. And, we're going to talk a little bit later about, what we can potentially do. But when you look at a process like that, how do you work out what you should be automated? So obviously we've talked about if it's a formulaic process, but obviously there could be hundreds of formulaic processes. How do you work out what's going to give you either the best ROI or add the most value to the business to be automated?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it really sort of starts with where people are spending their time. What's taking them away from the really valuable things that they're adding to the business.
Yeah.
So it all begins with, okay, when I'm conducting an audit or a strategy within a business, I'm looking at what technology are they using? Does that technology talk to each other, or are you exporting a CSV from one into another? What are the things that are being done within the business that can be automated to save that time? Because then you can start to look at things from an ROI. Well, how much is that? How much time is that process taking an individual?
Yeah.
How much is that person's time worth?
Yeah.
What else can they be doing? And you can do some quite simple calculations to work out, well, we can save this business quite a bit of money. We can save us quite a bit of time, increase productivity and profitability by just simply connecting those pieces of technology together, adding in our AI workflows, and everybody's got huge to-do lists. And there's always the important but not urgent things that are on their to-do lists. So by automating those processes that are taking up that person's valuable time, it enables them to get onto those really important things that they otherwise just keep putting off and keep putting off.
I think that's actually a really sort of good place to hang that, is I think going for that important, not urgent, and kind of, if I'm thinking about from an operational perspective, like you say, to-do lists are endless, and we are covering so many different functions usually within our role that it's really difficult to know actually what's going to be worth, because bear in mind as well, the kind of process of putting automation in is time consuming, and it's usually something that we're looking after, whether we're physically doing it or whether we're managing the vendors and the implementations and stuff like that. But I think actually going for that, because I love that matrix of like urgent, important, and I think
Eisenhower matrix, right?
Yeah. So I think actually saying, let's start there and let's look at what we can put in that absolutely does need to be done, but actually doesn't need to be done by a human being. And does it need to be done as soon as that request comes in? I think that's a really good way to look at it.
Yeah. So the other thing you were talking about earlier was about when people have got outdated pieces of technology, perhaps, you can't connect that piece of technology to other systems.
Yeah.
It's antiquated, maybe very difficult to use interface.
Yeah.
So just wanted to talk a little bit about how people would actually go about discovering new pieces of technology as well. So obviously, like we saw that slide at the beginning, which we were talking about, like how much stuff is, and I'll be honest, that's a fraction of stuff, because I know stuff that's out there that's just not even on that slide. So it just really kind of illustrates the point about how much there is out there. And I would say that because part of what I do as well is help businesses to understand the technologies that are going to be appropriate for them, and understand where the practical solutions for small businesses are. You're constantly battling against the companies who say they can do certain things that can't, companies that do things that aren't valuable.
Yeah.
So it's all about finding, okay, what are the technologies that are out there that actually do what I want them to do. When you're looking at your process as well for assessing and auditing your own technology stack, maybe you don't have to replace the whole system. Maybe there's one thing that you really wish it could do, or a couple of things that you really wish it could do. You can actually supplement that as well. So think about those things. Maybe your consultants are finding people on LinkedIn, but there's no way to get them from LinkedIn into the CRM system. Or there's probably a piece of technology out there that will enable you to do that automatically. So it's like other things as well. So if you're I don't know, like looking for a chatbot for your website, like there's so many of them out there. Like, how do you find the ones that are going to be suitable for you? And so the way that I would go about that, I mean, firstly, keeping your ear to the ground in terms of following people who talk about these things on LinkedIn, listening to podcasts, webinars. There's various recruitment technology summits and exhibitions. But also, I would say also expos within your sector as well. So if you're a marketing in person, or you work specifically in operations or finance, like going to those exhibitions as well is going to give, because it doesn't have to be a specific recruitment piece of technology. It can be a general piece of technology that has application within the recruitment sector. So obviously these are all really good places to find them. And the way I keep track of them is I use G2. So if people aren't aware of G2, it's G for golf, 2.com. Like it's essentially a trust pilot for technology companies.
Yeah.
So take a look on their website. Just type in the piece of technology that you're looking at. You'll find all of their competitors. You'll find reviews. You'll find functionality. You'll find pricing, and you can create lists where I've got a number of lists that I have. So, for example, things to connect CRMs to LinkedIn. I've got a whole list of technologies within there that do that. If it's email marketing tools, I've got a whole list of email marketing tools, and it's quite easy for me then to, when I talk to a client, to be able to say, okay, what are the specific things you're looking for, and then I can use those lists of where I keep track of those technologies and say, okay, well, actually, I think based on your need, I think this is probably the right one for you. So just within your own business, think about what are the things you want to do, and just start to keep track of technologies that are going to be able to fulfill that need.
And I think that's so important, because I think if you take that more proactive approach, the way that I always see it is like, basically make yourself a little shopping list. So think about, when we're looking at the recruitment process or how the wider processes are working in the business, and you've identified those areas. So either through an audit, you've identified products that you want to review and potentially swap out, or you've gone through where you want to fit tech into your business. You've got yourself a little shopping list. And I think having that more proactive approach to how you're looking at tech will stop you from doing things like just pulling on something that you've had a good sales pitch for, or like where someone's phoned one of the owners and now all of a sudden they're pitching in the boardroom and you're like, oh, I didn't even know we needed this piece of technology. I think if you go for that proactive, that organization, where actually when you get to the point where we're like, cool, budget has been signed off, I've now got these products that I've curated this list over the last, couple of months because I knew that this would be coming up. Now I can go, and it's just a much more strategic approach to how you're bringing tech into the business.
Yeah, for sure. And I think so I've got another slide which is just on actually assessing vendors as well. Mm-hmm. So so I think this is this is a list that we've both kind of agreed upon, which are the 8 criteria which you should be looking at when you're talking to a vendor and comparing vendors. Like, does it meet these needs? Now, for me, I think that there is an order of priority here to some degree, but that is going to vary depending on the industry. Yeah. So for example, like number 7, security compliance, people might go, oh, that's the most important thing. And, maybe it is for some industries, if you're working with the NHS or you're working in the finance sector, like maybe that's the most, but doesn't matter. It can be the most secure piece of technology in the world. If it doesn't have the functionality and it's not fulfilling a business objective, actually it's, it's not the most important thing to assess it on. So you spoke a little bit earlier about, what business objective that product is fulfilling. So maybe let's talk a little bit about value. Like, what value is it adding? And by that I mean both in terms of efficiency to what efficiency is it creating within the business, and also like what can it replace? So there are pieces of technology out there which do multiple things, and actually it might make a good business case for you if you can say, well, we're not spending more money on a new piece of technology because this is offset by such and such a thing that it's going to replace. And that could be, that doesn't necessarily need to be replacing another piece of technology. It could be that it's replacing a whole process. For example, what I alluded to earlier, it potentially replaces someone's time, or even a vendor as well. So say for example you have I don't know, a freelancer, or you have an agency that's doing a particular task for you, and there's a piece of technology that can actually replace that. You can really offset those costs. So the value really is the ROI, and that's both in terms of what it will add and also what it will remove from the existing processes and business.
Yeah, and I think the kind of, I like that we've got that so high up on the list, because I think like you say, regardless of how the other things might chop and change, I think it's really important to go into the process with value, and how you are going to realize that value or that ROI is really important. Because if you're going in and being like, how would I measure ROI on this? Or, how am I going to say? It's probably not the piece of tech for you, right? There should be some really, really clear sort of objectives that you're looking to hit within the business objectives. And there should be some really, really clear expectations of what you expect to see within the business if this product is functioning as it should be functioning.
Yeah, and on the functionality side, again, spoke a little bit about that already. What can it do? What can't it do? I think is just as important as well. So, when you're comparing pieces of technology, does it do everything that you wanted it to do, or are you going to need to, supplement that with additional technology, or are you going to be in a situation where, well, we wish it could do this, but it doesn't? Integrations, I think, for me is a massive one. I really wanted to put that top because, but actually, those other things, without those, integration doesn't matter. But the reason that's how I wanted to put it top is because I think in today's age of cloud technologies with APIs. Any piece of technology that doesn't integrate with your systems, I feel that's really outdated and a huge burden on your business in terms of your productivity. Because if you're copying and pasting from one system into another, if you're exporting information or you've got multiple sources of data, and you need to go and find, let's say you're doing a marketing report and you need to go to all of these different areas to pull this data, and then you're putting it into a spreadsheet, and the amount of time that takes people on a monthly basis. So integrations of can you pull all of that data into one system, and then actually maybe you have a dashboard even where you can have real-time insights. These are the types of things that people really should be looking at now, rather than spending hours, because those hours really add up as well. Let's say it takes you a couple of hours a week to pull together a marketing report, or let's say, I don't know, a couple of hours a month. Over the course of a year or over the course of several years, that's a lot of time.
Yeah, it is. Okay, I'm conscious of time, so shall we go for really quick on the contract side of things whilst we're talking about
absolutely
the vendor assessment? So again, we talked about this in terms of what our approach is. Let's say you've gone through this assessment, you've gone, yeah, cool, this is where I want to go. I think when you're thinking about negotiating your contracts, you need to take a couple of things into account, right? And part of that is most SaaS businesses are going to be looking to tie you into as long a contract as possible, right? That is how they increase their market value in terms of the amount of recurrent revenue they've got. They want you to be there for as long as possible. And usually that means they'll offer you some quite juicy discounts to sign in. Now, for me, I think you need to really think about this strategically over what's an appropriate amount of time for you to sign into a contract. Now, we talked about this separately and kind of said, look, if it is an absolutely essential product, that is a huge investment for you guys generally. But also, I won't name names, but a certain product that every single recruiter uses that has annual price hikes that are anything up to 8 to 10% a year is definitely worth at those points, considering those longer contracts. But when we're talking about pieces of like ad hoc technology that you're bringing into the business, you need to really consider like a variety of different things to work out if it's going to be appropriate for you to sign up to any. And I'm talking about stuff here where it's not just monthly rolling contracts, right? I'm talking about where someone wants you to sign up for years. And it's thinking about, is that piece of tech quickly going to be outdated? Is it something where we're seeing new updates come out regularly? And, you know, is there going to be another product? Or does one of your existing products have it on the roadmap to actually bring that functionality in within the next year or so? From a contractual perspective, when you guys are looking at signing these terms, can you reduce your number of licenses as well as increase? Because they're always happy for you to increase the amount. But actually, does that mean you're going to get stuck in a contract if, you know, business is fluctuating and sort of thinking about how your market's being affected at the moment? We've talked about that integration piece as well being very important. But I think for me, if, for example, you think that there could be a CRM migration on the cards within even the next couple of years, most of the time you're looking to integrate with your CRM. So don't necessarily, you know, make decisions if it's based on the fact that it's integrating with your current CRM. Thinking about if it's solving a nice to have, or if it's solving a specific problem that's costing you money, or if it's a nice to have product. And for me, this really came out of the back of COVID when I just absolutely stripped everything out of the business. And God forbid, we will never have to go through that again. But you also need to think of, if the market was all of a sudden to turn and you needed to strip things out, would you be really annoyed at paying X amount of money for a product that actually, you know, is just a nice to have product? And then also thinking about like how complex is it to implement? You know, is it something that either costs you money to implement? Is it something that is going to take you as an ops person a long time to actually get that product into the business and stuff like that? Because if it's a 3-month implementation and you only sign a 1-year contract, that's not giving you a lot of time to really get to grips with the product in the first place. So I think, you know, just when you're thinking about these negotiation points, and just take that into account as to whether saving a little bit of money but being tied in for 3 years, is that actually the right decision for the business to make?
Yeah, and being tied in as well, particularly in today's landscape with the pace of change with technology, I think is probably more risky than it may have been in the past.
Yeah.
You know, I've been in situations exactly that, like tied in for 3 years for a piece of technology that we think we'll never want to replace, and then 2 years down the line, and it's like, well, actually, our business has changed a little bit. And you know, particularly if you're in a recruitment business that's constantly growing, it's very difficult to know where you're going to be in 12, 24, 36 months. So signing those long contracts can be a bit of a risk in that regard.
100%.
Cool. Well, I think we're pretty much on time in terms of the 45 minutes we've allocated for this session. I think we can probably do a few more minutes for Q&A. I know there's one question that we've had outside of the comments here. So, if any, which is about AI's impact on jobs, and particularly automation. And I think we should address that one. But if there are any other comments, if there are any other questions, please leave them in the comments, and we'll either try to answer them now or get back to you on those. So yeah, AI on jobs. So we had a brief conversation prior to this. I think there were probably 3 things when it came to AI and jobs. One is the impact of AI on jobs for recruitment clients and how that's going to affect recruitment businesses. There's the impact of people who work in what's the impact on recruitment consultants and how they should be thinking about their job with AI. And then thirdly, there's people who work in operations and marketing roles and back office roles within recruitment businesses. Where do you want to start?
So I think, I like to start with what's the impact on, I guess, the recruiter's role and what they're doing. And, probably every week on LinkedIn, someone's got a product that's going to replace recruiters and you're never going to need to engage with a recruiter ever again. To me, I'm just like, that is not going to happen. Like, to me, if you are thinking AI can replace my job as a recruiter, I don't necessarily think you've got the fine art of recruiting. To me, what it makes recruitment skills so special, AI is never going to be able to replace, right? AI is never going to be able to coach a candidate through an interview process or to help them identify skills that they didn't realize they have and help them go in and nail those job interviews. It's not going to be able to negotiate. It's not going to be able to provide market consultancy and help businesses really strategically think about the future. And to me, that's the real value of recruiters in the world as it is today. And, if your job is literally just doing the admin part of it, then yes, probably you are going to be replaced by AI. But then we need to think about actually, are you adding true value as a recruiter in the first place? But also, I saw a product quite recently that was around doing sort of AI first stage interviews. And for me, I was like, I wouldn't be scared as a recruiter, but we get so caught up in this bubble of like professional services recruitment. And, I thought about this product and I was like, do you know what? There absolutely is a market for this, but it's just not a market that competes with the service that a recruiter does. So to me, no, you're not going to be replaced by AI, but the nature of your role will become more value focused and less about, doing that admin side of things and just, high volume mass communications and stuff like that.
Yeah, I would never say never when it comes to when it comes to AI. A lot of people in the past were saying how AI was only ever going to be used for performing very kind of cognitive tasks, but not creative tasks. People were blown away by ChatGPT and Synthesia creating videos. You've got all these platforms that now are creating images. People said that was the last thing. Those were the last jobs, and actually it turns out those are some of the first things. So I would never say never when it comes to AI. What I would say is that where I think AI will struggle to replace is that for recruiters to add real value, it's about reading between the lines when you're talking to a client. What do they really need versus what they say they need based on your experience of having dealt with similar situations. When you talk to a client, when you talk to a candidate, when you ask them that question, to try and discover how engaged they are in this role, how do they respond to that? What are the words that they use? But then what's the body language that they use?
Body language, yeah.
It's about reading between the lines. And I think, that's really where the skills that need to be honed is those personal skills, because AI is going to be very good at matching. Well, maybe it's not actually used, but it'll be good at matching what's on your CV. But again, does your CV necessarily reflect your skills? So people are good or not good at writing CVs. It doesn't mean to say that they are a good candidate, or maybe the terms that they use. You have to be good at SEO for your CV these days. To be able to put all the right keywords into it. I would never say never. But I think that you're right. That the value that a recruiter will add will be those personal connections. So in terms of people who are working in maybe back office roles, I think particularly people who are working in operations roles, again, I would never say never, but I think that you have I actually think you have a bit of an advantage. So as someone myself who worked, so my focus was marketing, but when I started in a professional recruitment space, I was working both operations and marketing. So I had that crossover, and I actually think that's quite a good place to be, because you'll be the person who's relied on to actually be looking at these technologies, implementing these systems, figuring out how this stuff works, setting this stuff up. Like, that's quite the responsibility that individual has, I think, puts them at a good advantage. And I would say that being proactive about future skills and ensuring that you're not just thinking, oh, okay, this is the silo that I fit into. Being an active learner is really important for those people. But I think if you're working in one of those roles, you're probably at an advantage. If you're pure marketing and maybe you're a copywriter, I think we're already seeing. Well, I know we're already seeing. There was a study that came out recently that showed how demand for those types of. So I think it was a survey that was done on Fiverr, and demand for copywriters hugely declined. And the advent of ChatGPT, so people realize that they can do these things themselves. And I do see more and more kind of copywriter type roles, with the people in those roles with the open to work banners. I think that sort of stuff's already starting to happen. And again, just really invest in those future skills and prepare yourselves for what's coming down the line, and be an active learner. Don't be like define yourself by the role that you do now. Actively seek out the next thing that you're going to move on to.
100%. And I think even in I've been doing this for sort of 14, nearly 15 years now. And when I think about like job specs from when I first started, in this particular career versus where the job specs are now, and also having, working for a business where we were, recruiting ops people, I could see this real shift towards it, probably moving away from the administrative, HR type things that would be covered under ops a lot prior to this, to actually just being very CRM focused and being like, you're owning the CRM. We want to have a CRM first strategy. How is tech working in your business? And I think as long as you keep up with that and you make sure that you take a priority of that in your business, because it's also going to affect things like about how you're writing your CV, how you're displaying your skills, like making sure that you're highlighting that you are moving along with those new requirements within the ops role. I think it's going to be really important as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the final thing that we didn't sort of talk about too much yet was around the wider impact of AI on jobs, which is going to impact recruitment companies. And I think, again, there's just a case there for just maximizing your own efficiency and profitability, because it's going to start becoming more competitive between recruitment companies as fewer jobs become available to actually hire for. That would be my expectation of what would happen. Again, might be wrong, but that would be my expectation, and that was how I would try to protect my business, would be to try and become as efficient as possible with those processes by adopting those technologies within my business. We do have a couple of comments about specific recommendations. I'll hand this one over to yourself, Natasha. If you have any, can you see those comments?
I can, yeah. So, Josie, in terms of, so first of all, I mean, it's going to depend a little bit on which CRM you're on, because obviously we want to have something that's integrated. So I believe Access has just bought Hireara. So that will be for like any Vincere type databases that helps with CV formatting. I have not used it myself, so I don't know the quality of it. I just know that they've recently acquired that. I know, but I feel like Bullhorn used to have its own integrated version of it, or had something that did that, but I don't know any specific products around that. Pete, I don't know if you have any specific products
for formatting CVs. Not specifically. There are tools I'm aware of that could do a job, but I don't know whether they're specific to CV formatting.
Yeah. Okay. And then Ivana, so the monotonous admin tasks again. So Pete, there must be something that we can look at here that's around just like, how do we get those those things to connect with each other and just little admin things that they're doing?
Yeah, so there's absolutely tools for admin. It's quite a broad thing to say, because there are so many monotonous admin tasks. I think it's about being very specific about what those tasks are. So the way I would approach things is to break down, I guess, the standard operating procedure for actually performing those tasks.
Yeah.
What are the steps that you go through? And then actually you can start to create automations around fulfilling those specific steps.
Yeah.
So again, it's about finding the technologies that can do those for you. It's about using, there are plenty of automation softwares on the market. Again, really depends on the size of your business, and if it's one recruiter who's like, I want to automate this, and you may find it more challenging to bring something like that into a business when no one else is using it, because companies don't want to pay for those standalone tools. But actually, if you can build a business case for everybody to have access to this, then and demonstrate the benefit, then yeah, absolutely. So I personally use Zapier as an automation tool. So you can that has a no-code interface which has 7,000 apps you can plug into it. It's really great. There's limitations.
Also quite easy to do because I have just started playing with it myself. So as a person who is not an actual tech person, it's so easy to use, and it definitely integrates with a lot of the recruitment tools that we regularly use anyway. So yeah, definitely that could be a good one to look at.
And anything with an API, you can look at the API documentation of a CRM system, and even if you're going to the drop-down menus in Zapier, it's the functionality you want isn't necessarily there. Somebody who with some coding ability, such as myself, who may be able to come in and set that sort of stuff up for you as well.
Absolutely.
I've got a few others here. How
yeah,
you doing?
So Rodney, so do you, Rodney, we'll have to have a look at, but do you have bullhorn automation? Because obviously that's literally what it is built for in terms of sequencing your emails. So if you haven't got that,
didn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So if you haven't spoken to them about it, speak to them. That we'll be able to find some other tools that are sort of standalone tools. But I think obviously naturally that's the one that they built into the system. So that's probably the easiest thing for you to use.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I think we should probably wrap it up there.
Rodney, I will come back to you on those other ones, or ask in the ops group. Anyone that's not in the ops group already, just send me a message and we can have a chat about this in there as well and see what other recommendations there are.
Cool. So yeah, just thanks for your time, Natasha, and thank you for everybody's time who watched this on their lunch breaks or whatever. So yeah, we appreciate that. It'd be great to hear back. Please continue to put your comments and questions in the discussion here, because we will come back and address those. Also, we'd love to hear feedback on what you found valuable from this session as well. It'd be really useful for us to hear that for future sessions. Maybe we can delve into some of these topics in a bit more depth as well. So so from my side of things, if you wanted to reach out to me, you can find me on LinkedIn and reach out, drop me a message if you wanted to chat further, or visit my website, which is MQLFlow.com. And Natasha, your pitch.
Yeah, same. So connect with me on LinkedIn. If you're interested in the ops mentoring program, it's recruitmentopsmentoring.co.uk that gives you details from workshops to one-to-one programs, coaching, all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, go and have a look.
Amazing. All right, thanks again, and look forward to seeing more comments and feedback. Appreciate it. Cheers, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Bye.